Here we are. Barbara, welcome.
Hi, hi. Happy Friday, Adam.
Happy Friday. So here we are. I just want to say thank you very much for being my very first guest on Wine and Design, which I've designed to happen on a Friday at 4:30. And the idea here is that we get to have a bit of a relaxation, catch up, chat, have a glass of wine. Here's my wine here.
Mine's empty already, Adam.
It's empty.
I have it here, but it took you
It's
a
been
couple of
that
minutes
kind
to
of a
start.
week. How's your week been, Barbara?
It's been really good, thank you. And I'm glad that you've even designed the day of the week that it's going to be on, Adam. Designers can't help themselves, can they?
No. Well, look, I mean, 4:30 is a bit early for a drink, but I think, have you had a hard week so far? Have you had a busy week?
No, it's been a really good week. I always have good weeks.
Oh,
They're
cool.
yeah, some better than others, but always good weeks. So
Okay.
yeah, it's the Jan's just finished, so people are starting to get back into a bit of a rhythm now, and we'll get back to business and all of those things. So yeah, it's good. Been a good week.
Fantastic. So I might just kick off. So I'm really pleased to have you here. So Barbara, I've known for a while. Barbara is an interior designer and is the curator for the Curious Art Bar, curator and owner of the Curious Art Bar. And as an interior designer, as you know, Barbara, art is such an important thing when we're putting together interiors for clients, and that's why it's great to talk to you about it. Just a little bit about me to anyone that's on here that doesn't actually know me very well. My name's Adam Scoogle, and I'm an interior designer. I've really just branched out into interior design, as you know, Barbara, after 18 years in corporate. In July last year. So this is really, it's great to be able to have these discussions and really great to be able to talk about all those wonderful things that make our job so interesting and enriching. So great to talk to you as well, Barb, because you and I were talking just before we came on about a presentation that you put together with Kate St James and Catherine Whiting from St James Whiting, as well as Judith Briggs, who's another fantastic interior designer who's a colour expert, really has a book out that it's a really good book. Do you remember the name of Judith's book? I'm trying to think of it off the top of my head. But
Oh,
anyway, what is
or
it?
color your world,
Colour Your
perhaps.
World, I think. Maybe if Judith's on here, she'll be able to correct us in the
Please forgive
notes at
us
some point.
if we've gotten that
Yeah,
wrong.
yes, because we don't want to get it wrong. But what I really loved it was really talking about what you guys did, what you guys do, and I found it a very interesting thing. I mean, we're all designers sitting in the room, and obviously there's a whole lot of things, products, different ways that you address art and curate and fine tune pieces to your clients' needs. But I think I'd like to actually just ask you to kind of kick off and tell us about Curious Art Bar, and maybe let's talk about some of the things that we covered that night because they're very interesting.
Yeah, and look, and we'll come back to that night because it was a really good educational night in terms of design, but trying to, I guess, inform designers and architects from several different points of view, the things they need to take into consideration when they are presenting art and putting art into whether it's residential or commercial sites, whatever that is. And it was great because I speak from the point of view of Curious Art Bar, and my passion, my
Mm.
lifelong passion, has been art. Kate St James and Catherine Whiting are both speaking from the point of view of artists, and Kate also as a curator of magazines. And interestingly enough, when you look at Kate's art, you can see that there's a curator in her. It's always really interesting to me. And then of course Judith Briggs from the point of view of saying, how do you take something that's a really beautiful piece of art and then enhance it even better or even more by using the right colors behind it. And so it was a really great talk, and we have an educational series planned for during the course of this year. Rachel Devine, also from Resine Paints, joined us and
Oh, that's right.
talked a lot
Yes.
about the depth of saturation in paints. And again, so Judith had selected colors, but then Rachel talked about again what sits behind those paints that again make art stand out even more. So we'll kind of revisit that a little bit later. But the question is like tell you a little bit about myself and Curious Art Bar. I guess I've been an interior designer for a quite a while, and but my great passion in life, I guess, has always been art. Doesn't matter where I travel in the world or whatever I do, I'm always wandering around art galleries. It's kind of just what I do. I've done it all of my life. I painted for a little while when I was a teenager. I was trained in painting, but as much as I enjoy doing that, that's going to be my retirement hobby. I love and appreciate the painting and the works of other people, and particularly as an interior designer, using art. And art for me, art and rugs are probably the two of the most important design elements in any room for me personally. And I think particularly important in this day and age, and I think I touched on this the night we were talking, is that in this day and age where we live in increasingly smaller spaces and we have less and less wall spaces, where we live in open plan spaces, the use of one-dimensional or two-dimensional items or objects like art and rugs to add interest and depth to our rooms is so important. So for me, it's become perhaps even more important than what it was historically when we lived in larger homes and they were sort of a bit more rambling, a bit more spacious. But yeah. So lifelong love of it.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I totally agree. The spaces are getting smaller, and one of the things that you were talking about, which I think is really key when I think about art and the importance of art in interiors, is that sometimes I find that some of my clients have tended to come in and purchase a lot of the pieces, not always, but sometimes pieces of furniture in advance, start to paint walls in advance, and then they'll come in and say, by the way, here's a really important piece that we've got to make work.
Right.
And there's a particular colorway in that
Yeah.
piece which is sometimes, and the good thing about, I guess, what we do as designers, Barbara, is because that's our background, we're able to do some magic in situations like that. But it is a lot easier, isn't it, if we're not going ahead and painting walls and
Yeah.
purchasing fabric for sofas in a particular colorway and putting rugs in before we consider some of the most important pieces that you can't really just color match is really lovely pieces of art that we may have had for some time.
Yeah, very, very true, Adam. And I guess, and if you think about the piece of artwork, and you think a designer could easily probably go and find 100 different tones that will work with that particular piece of artwork. But there's that principle that I always talk about with clients, which is that good, better, and best. And there's no difference in the cost of getting the very, very best color to complement that piece of art and really, really make it stand out, particularly if it's important to you, than there is in getting the wrong color. So there's no cost variance in it, and so then it's almost shameful to not have the right piece there. And that is, I guess, another thing that I guess Judith talked about on that night, was she literally showed, which was really fun for the designers and the architects who were in attendance. She would pick out colours, and I was there with her during the process when she was picking out those colours that were going to be shown that night. And she would pick out something. She'd say, "Oh, yeah, there's a bit of that in the background." I'd go, "Really?" And I'd have a good look. And I have seen this piece a lot of times, but she has such a good eye for colour. And then each of those different colours, of course, did something entirely different, as you would imagine, to the piece of art.
Yeah.
So it is incredibly important for clients who have important pieces of artwork to have a discussion very early on in the piece with their designer, not just about the colours of the walls that might go behind it, but also its location and what it's going to be paired with to, again, give it balance and importance in a room. So yes, it's really important, and yes, a good thing to discuss early.
Yeah, one of the things I'd love for you to recap on this, Barbara. I think when Kate and Catherine at that event were going through, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong about the process, say for Kate, but Kate had examples of photographs, I think, that she'd taken from trips overseas. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a process there to really, they were repainted or reproduced based on some of these really quite significant photographs that she'd taken. And then it was a whole process of being able to manipulate and enhance parts of that, change the colorways in particular portions, or or other pieces where you could actually blow up a certain section of, a landscape or I don't know, a textural element of the piece and sort of almost create a totally new work of art from the same piece. You know what I'm trying to say? This
Yeah,
was kind
I
of all
do.
of this
And
curation that you guys are able to
yes,
do.
and so Kate will take Kate St James will take photographs of things that she finds really interesting, either architecturally, and she's really interested in the built environment. Her husband's an architect, and she's worked in design and around designers all of her life. So you would imagine that is a great interest to her. But then she would take that piece of basically an art photograph that she's taken. She's taken it
Mm.
very with in mind what she's going to do to the piece, and then she digitally enhances that. So she reproduces that picture digitally in whatever color way that she uses, and she tends to have a fairly consistent palette that runs through, which is really beautiful and full of just full of amazing colors. And in fact, if you look at the old masters, you will see that those same color palettes run through the works of Gauguin and through Picasso and a whole range of other very like old masters as well. So
Mm.
it's a very tested, I think, palette, and I don't think she did that intentionally, but it's a very pleasing palette. But yes, she does that, and then of course they use, or we use, a an artisan printer, so he does the digital reproductions of those pictures, and the way that is done and then reproduced on fine art paper, on literally on archival paper, um, that could be blown up. The resolution, I think this is what you were getting to, Adam. The resolution of that is so high that you could blow it up and wallpaper a wall with it. It's incredible, and so it's a combination of really beautiful things. Kate's incredibly beautiful, I think, editorial eye for looking at design work, then taking that and then once that's created, then just making sure that every aspect of its reproduction is as fine, as good quality as it can be. So we're really proud of that range, and likewise, she also paints with Catherine. Catherine paints alone as well, but same process, and yeah, it's really fantastic, and it's a great thing for us. One of the, I think, again, Adam, we might have talked about this on the night, that one of the things that I personally, as a designer, find most desirable about this range is that they're limited edition, so they're one of 30, but within that range you can scale a piece to the size that you require for a client. So as a designer or an architect, you can take something that they may have produced, one of 30 in, a meter by a meter, but if
Mm.
your client to be larger or smaller, that can be done. And because as a designer, my frustration on many occasions has been finding the most beautiful, perfect piece of art for somebody, but it's just the wrong scale and it doesn't work. And then we have to abandon it and go and look for something else that has the right scale, because that's as important as anything else in the room and in the space. So yes, Kate has this very, very unique and really interesting style that and again quite varied. So it's nice for me too, because it's they have quite unique styles, quite a varied amount of styles between the two girls. So for me, as representing them and representing their art is great, because there's lots of variation, and I like that as well. So
Yeah, I know that's such a cool process to be able to do that. I was just wondering, Barbara, do you have any examples of any time recently where you've really had to sort of create and modify one of these pieces? So it's really only 30 pieces, isn't it?
yes,
So they're quite,
yeah,
it's a low reproduction. So what's it? I was just thinking, is there like an interesting example
yeah.
you could
There's so
talk
there's
about with a particular client where you?
Yeah, so there's an original piece which is very small that Catherine has painted, beautiful beautiful blues, like gorgeous aquamarines and beautiful lapis colours. It's gorgeous, really really deep saturated blues with gold leaf. Now, there's a client who we have done some other work for, which are over in Thailand now, which is great, and we're waiting for that room to get finished so we can show you some lovely photos of it. But that very small piece, which might have been maybe 250 by 400, so quite small, has
Mm.
now been reproduced in 900 by 2 meters for the
Wow.
top of the stairway leading into an apartment. So, and that's been reproduced as another original, but so as part of a series, but in a larger scale. And I've seen the work. The work is nearly complete. In fact, I think it's been framed now, and it's spectacular. And so it's a client who loved that piece of art, but again, the scale was
Am I back? I'm
yeah,
back?
you are. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're having
So,
some
so
little
so it's
hiccups,
been
but go on.
recreated. Yeah, so that's a really good example of what I was talking about earlier, where there's you might fall in love with a piece of art, but it's just the wrong scale, and that's a great advantage with. And I'm very lucky to represent two artists who are so flexible, particularly within our industry. And I think again maybe because their backgrounds are in design, it fundamentally they understand that that's a really important part of creation of art.
The size and the scale is key.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely, always, yeah.
You can also change the colorway of, say, that same piece if it was in gold leaf and a blue, can't you? Is
You
that right?
can, and yes, that you can, and again, that the girls have done that, so they have created, they take one thing, and if even if one tone is not correct in it, it can be changed and modified. So again, really flexible for designers, which is really, yeah, very very helpful for us in this industry, I think.
What's the process, Barbara, to do that, to change the colorway? What is it?
So
How does that work?
for Kate, that would be well, because all of their photography work, for example, it's all digitally stored. So
Right,
basically that color is changed digitally
right.
and then reproduced. And that of course then when you change a color, then that does become a different print. Uh, so the scaling of a print within a limited edition series is that same colorway, but there is also the option to have something new done and in a different colorway.
That's fantastic. And do you find that the most people are coming, or do you find a lot of people are coming to you guys with the art in mind first, or do you also sometimes have that challenge where the piece that you're creating is having to fit around an existing scheme with color?
Yeah, I think a bit of each. And when something does have to fit around an existing color, that's probably no big deal because there's a lot of choice in Curious Art Bar. So there's a lot of things that people could do, or they could commission their own, whatever that is. So again, that. Kate has a fantastic series called, or one of the pieces is called View from My Room, which is, a, a, a photograph that was an art photograph that she took, which was like the rooftops of Lewisham, and in the background there's the mega crane building the Meriton Monster in all the terrace houses in Lewisham,
Mm.
and of course that the view that picture represents wouldn't even exist anymore. It's not there. There's probably a building sitting in the background there. But we have also had clients who have then come with a photograph that they've taken of something that's really important to them in their street or their suburb or whatever that is, and then Kate can do the same thing for them. So that's the view from their room or a view from their suburb or whatever that is. So that's fun too, to be able to very much personalize something for somebody when it's an important view for them and for corporates as well. Whether it's an important, it's an important building for a corporation or whatever that is, to be able to have that personalized is really nice. So it's a fantastic process. Um, the highest of quality, and then when it's printed on the beautiful paper, the beautiful art paper, the fine art paper, they're just spectacular. And they can be printed on canvas as well, but the majority of people really opt for the paper.
Yeah, so it's amazing too. I mean, the resolution, or if that's the right word, but I remember being at the night and there was a piece, I can't remember the piece, Barbara, but it was right up the front. And it was a reproduction, it was a print, but I could
Yes,
have sworn that it was the original. And I think,
yes,
other people had mentioned too, I think even Greg Natali, designer Greg
yeah.
Natali, had said that he thought it was an original. So it's just
Oh,
incredible, isn't it? The
yes,
technology.
it is. And until you
Mm,
stand side onto these pieces, you wouldn't actually know that they're not three-dimensional. And yes, you're right. And Greg Natali made exactly that comment. There was one piece in particular that he really loved, which was called Mustard Seed, and it's a
that
piece
was the one.
it's a piece that's been
Yeah.
created with fairly thick layering of paint, and and again, you cannot tell. You just absolutely cannot tell. So yeah, so the reproduction is fantastic. The quality is beautiful, and of course, you would expect nothing else from the girls, I guess. So you
So
know the girls. You know that I
yeah,
think you know the girls, and you'd expect nothing less as well.
of course, yeah. I mean, there's a whole lot of different mediums there. You've got you offer some photography as well. There's
Yes,
unique photography as well, isn't there?
yeah, I do. And one of the photographers that I guess, promoting at the moment, and she's just done a new range, is Monique Sato, who's a designer who we both know again, and
Yes.
love and appreciate her work. And she's so quite different to the girl. She has an incredibly quirky outlook on life, and presents us with images of all things from like donkeys in a farmyard up to beautiful women, in cloche hats with cigarettes, like representing the 1930s, speakeasies and
Mm.
the Prohibition period. She has a really fun eye, and again, but the photography is done the same way. So the photography is then taken, printed on this beautiful German paper, this beautiful fine art paper, recreated by these artisan printers who specialise in nothing else excepting for creating beautiful reproductions of, and going into their, I've got to say, for me, going into where they print and seeing all of these papers hanging with these absolutely gorgeous reproductions of all sorts of artists from all over Sydney, including Charles Billich. They do all of his work. For me, it's an absolute joy just wandering around their studio or their workroom and just looking to see what's come off the printer. And yeah, amazing art.
Is this all done? Is this locally
Yes, it
produced?
is. So yeah, they're in Sydney,
Right.
and yeah, which is fantastic for us. They live 2 minutes for work, 2 minutes from our framer, so it's even better for us. It's all very convenient. Yeah, no, they are, and as I said, we're very fortunate.
Beautiful. One of the things I love as well, Barbara, is just getting into the framing side of things and doing some very different things, in terms of using framing, rather than your sort of bog standard black and white sort of box frame, da da da. But do you sort of also have interesting options there in terms of different framing options as well, for whether it's photography or even some of the paintings, the reproductions
Yeah,
there?
look, we do. We just offer what the girls think looks best, which is usually what you would do. But absolutely, people can have something framed in any range of frames. I mean, there's thousands of them to choose from. As you know, you did something. Was it end of last year? You did some work at a framers, and what was your video about?
Yeah, so I did a talk with Acme Framing, who I use. Acme are in Surrey Hills here in Sydney,
Yes.
and actually, it was a really fun experience, Barbara. I was working on a project over in Mossman, and it was the first time that I'd really had a collaboration with the framer, or a consultation. It
Mm.
was a consultation. So it was a new process for me, because normally I'd have a consultation with the client, and then it would really be me going away and taking those ideas to
Ah,
whoever, including
right.
framers, and saying, look, I want this or that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times in the past for me with the framers, not with Acne, but other framers, it's just been, well, tell us what you need. Here's the options on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the mats. Here's the frames. You could maybe
Yeah.
put this and that together,
Yeah.
and let me know what you want. But going into Acme was a totally different experience. In that we really, we were looking at colors from the pieces, and actually taking out, putting in spacer frames in the same colors, which is like the gap between
Yes.
the glass and the back of the, you know all the terms. I'm not
Yeah.
great with all the terms,
Yeah.
Barbara. The spacer was a certain color, bringing out a teal in the picture. And then, we literally were also, like, I was color matching Dulux colors to the front of the frame, taking the color again from, it could be a
Yeah.
landscape, some rust detail, and we really color matching a Dulux rust, one of their range, and doing the very front and mixing that up, and just to have an experience, just to go into a consultation with a framer who's equally engaged in doing something bespoke. And that's the thing about, I think, the thing that I love about what we do, and the thing that I liked about the whole Curious Art Bar St James Whiting presentation that night was that it was all about totally creating something from scratch or modifying it completely at some points to make it unique, for your home. If you're the consumer, it's for your home, and that's stuff that's really interesting, isn't it? To see the outcome.
And I think it's interesting that you enjoy that experience so much, because I guess that's what we hope to do all the time. And I guess that's because as a designer, that's what I hope for. When I go to, we tend to, as you know, as designers, we use the same tradesmen and we use the same suppliers over and over again once we trust them and we understand, and we rely on them to give us really good advice, whether it's about a piece of electronics, a washing machine, or I've been in many times to select things for clients and somebody will say to me, "Oh, Barb, don't go near that, forget it," because they know what they have problems with, etc., etc. So as designers, we tend to develop very interesting relationships with our suppliers, because there's a trust relationship where we can't be experts in absolutely everything. So we rely on people like that to be our experts. So it's interesting that what you sought out and suddenly discovered you hadn't had with other people, with Acme framing that you were just talking about, was enough to kind of wake you up and kind of go, wow, that's what I can get when I go to somebody who really knows what they're talking about and what they're doing. And I guess that's ultimately what we always want to deliver for our clients, who are typically designers or architects, but clients, any client, because that's our job to do that, to make sure that they do get the best out of a piece of art, and that it's not just the art that's beautiful, but everything about the way it's installed and its size is all just exactly right and just exactly as it should be.
Barbara, what's the process? I'm a designer and I come to you.
Yes.
What's the process? If I've got an idea for take me through the project, if I'm coming to you as a designer and say, look, I've kind of got an idea, I've got sort of a template more or less for what I'd like to see happen, but I'm really interested in, again, like that Acme framing collaboration, I'm really interested in collaborating with you on some of the options, and it could be original art, or it could be me coming to you. It could be me coming to you with a photograph, couldn't it? And asking you to do something
Yeah.
different with a photograph.
And
What would the process be?
Yeah, so different people do different things, and some people come in and they have no clue what they want. They just know that they might, it might be as broad as, I would like to buy something modern, or I'd like to buy something a little bit more traditional, or and so we'll basically sit down and have a conversation about what the project is that they're working on. And other designers, to be clear, will know exactly. They'll be crystal clear about what they want, and they'll know the sizes, but they're few and far between. And so a lot of people do rely on somebody for advice. So if somebody came in and just said, okay, this is my project, because we would just sit down with them and say, okay, what's the project, what are you trying to achieve? Because it's also our job to understand because they have their vision for the entire project and how the whole thing will look when it's finished. So we need to understand what that is so that we can give them the best advice. And then once that's done, then we do everything we can to, make sure that we can even, Kate will do mock-ups for people. So she will put together small presentations that will show other pieces that they've selected, the colours that are going into it, so that they can present to their client as well. So for somebody who doesn't even have the ability to do that, that's something that we can present for them. And because obviously we have all the images in house, and they're all kind of ready to go. And then from there, they would present to their client in whichever way they want to do that. And even if they wanted us to do that, then we would be very happy to be involved in that as well, and in fact have been. So yeah,
How
different.
does that work then, Barbara? Am I walking into a physical location, or am I doing this online? How is this?
It
How is it working?
depends. So you can walk into a physical location, and we can have whatever you might want to be there for you to have a look at some art. And we have been in various galleries, and so if it happens to coincide with the time that we're at the gallery, you can join us in the gallery and do that. But so it depends on kind of what I'm doing at that time with the artworks. There's three more gallery exhibitions scheduled for this year for Curious Art Bar and for the
Fantastic.
photography and for St James Wedding. So, as I said, if it coincides with that, but if it doesn't, then I have art. It's a little bit like anything, Adam. Like if you think about us with pieces of furniture, once I've
Mm,
seen a supplier's furniture and the quality of what they do, I never really go back. I understand what they're doing and I trust them, and I'm all good unless colour's very specific and I need to see it very specifically. And it's the same. Once people, we can show them the art and the quality of the art, and once they know that,
mm,
they're good. Designers are good like that. Easy to work with. Architects, same. Um, Clients, if it was a client, and would probably take something in situ into their home so that they could see it there
right.
and kind of understand the quality in their home. I like people to see things in the right light, so I like to see what the lighting's like as well in places, as most designers would
Mm,
do, uh, to also determine what's going to go in there. So we would rely on the designer for that, or they might ask us to go and view the site. So I guess we're just really flexible, and whatever it takes to get the best outcome for that client, it's all good. And that's the same, and that's no different to anything that any of us do as designers.
mm.
Same, depends on the client, depends on what you're presenting.
Fantastic. I just realised that we're out of time. I
Oh,
could have gone
really?
on for half an
You
hour.
talk so much, Adam.
I know I talk so much.
Yeah.
No, that's great information, Barbara. Just want to thank you very much for getting through our. We had some little technical issues, but we got on here,
We did.
and thank you for taking the time to talk about
It's all good.
fabulous Curious Art Bar and the wonderful people we've spoken about, Kate and Catherine and Monique, and I think where can we look? The website I think is probably a good. There's a lot of
Yeah,
detail on there, isn't there,
yeah. There
Barb?
is Curious Art Bar. There's a Facebook page, Curious Art Bar. So just Curious Art Bar, you'll find us. But can I just say before we go that
Yeah,
thank you for inviting me to chat. But I'm a fan of yours, and
thank you.
I really am a great admirer of your work, and so I feel very
Thanks,
privileged
Barb.
that you've asked me, because I wish you well with this series, and I'm sure you're going to do. I have no doubt you're going to do really well with it. But I'm for those who are listening, I'm a massive Adam Scroogle fan myself.
Oh,
Love your work. So
thank
and
you.
we've talked about this before. You are a great example of somebody who's not afraid of using colour, and that's all part of what we've been talking about today as well.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Barbara. That was lovely. I didn't even have to
Well,
pay for that. It was all just,
yeah, that's it.
that was ad hoc, but I really
Last
appreciate it. You're a
time,
sweetie. And so Curious Art Bar, there is a Facebook group. Would you mind, Barb, putting
I'll
in
pop them.
the details of all of that in the comments so that people
Yeah,
can log on and find you, because it's amazing curation service. And it's been so lovely to speak to you this afternoon. And
if anybody would like
yeah,
to do
thank
their
you very
clients,
much.
yeah, anybody who'd like to do their clients a huge, great big favour, come and see us and look at the girls and all the art, but the girls range and Monique's range in particular. So thank you, Adam. Really appreciate it. And love chatting.
Fantastic. Have a great weekend, Barbara.
Yeah, you too. Take
Thank
care.
you. I'll talk to you soon. See you guys.